addressing them instead of industrial actions, which he said add to the problems. In the chamber now is Malam Ibrahim Shekarau, a nominee from Kano State. He was the only two-term governor of that state.
But if there is anything that, on second thoughts, you felt you should have put in the CV that is not here, just remind us so that we can update the CV. Or indeed, if there is any issue here on the CV that you want to emphasize, just to help us in making our decision, then you can do so. Senators are going to ask you questions. I expect you to answer the questions as candidly as you can. Be frank, be very sincere with us, and if you don't know the answer to a particular question, say so. If there is anything that you think we should know, you let us know. And if there is any reason, if you think on the second thought that you also don't want us to clear you, you tell us also so that we can hold on to that in making our decision. So in a few minutes, just tell us who you are, and then we'll ask you a couple of questions.
Your Excellency, the Senate President, distinguished senators, ladies and gentlemen, I haven't anything new, Your Excellency, to add to the CV. The only new thing I may wish to add is to very humbly register my thanks and gratitude to Almighty God, by whose grace I'm standing before you today, and by whose grace I'm interacting with you. It is a very rare privilege, and I'm happy that I'm here. Thank you.
George Thompson Sikibo.
Mr. Chairman, thank you very much. My colleagues. Mr. Nominee, I have 3 short questions. 3, and the questions are on 3, how to come by poverty reduction. You have steered the ship sometime, so you know where the problems are. Question number 1. One main source of poverty is unemployment. And we keep on talking about it day and night. While avenues to absorb those who are unemployed has not been created, more are being torn out from our universities and other higher institutions. What will you advise to the Federal Executive Council, assuming an issue of this nature comes up, how to provide employment to reduce poverty? That's question number 1. Question number 2. Now I'm talking about unemployment. The other one is poverty. One main source of unemployment is power generation. We've been talking about it every day. I think we are still battling with it. As a former governor, you may have a better knowledge on it. What would be advice on how to speedily provide power for the Nigerian people? And finally, if our manufacturing sector is working very well, I know in the early 70s, Many people from the south will move to Kano and Kaduna and get employment in several industries. Today, many of them are closed down. What will you prescribe for a revolution in the manufacturing sector? Thank you very much. I'm not very precise.
Galim Solomon.
Thank you, sir, Mr. President. Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, Mr. Nominee, my question is very simple, but I want to give you the basis for the question. One, is not very often that we have a former governor here. We've had about 2, 3. And governance is continuous. There should not be a vacuum. And there's need for us to deepen our democracy. You agree with me? Particularly for the benefit of those people coming after us. And you served for 8 years. Is serving a governor that held sway for 4, 8 years, you will agree, is a repository of knowledge and experience, which it can bring to bear on the generation succeeding him. In retrospect, what will you have done differently? Looking past at your tenure, what will you have done differently? Or what will you advise an aspiring governor or a new governor to focus on for the benefit of your state? Thank you very much.
Adamu Gumba.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I am Senator Adamu Ibrahim Gumba. I represent Bauchi South. Your Excellency, you know very well that in developed countries, political parties are built on ideologies, and they have been institutionalized. In the UK, for example, it is extremely difficult for a member of the Labour Party to move to the Tory Party, the Conservative Party, and vice versa. They have built their political parties on the basis of ideology, and they have become so committed to these political parties, to these ideologies and principles, that they hardly accept to move from one party to the other. In Nigeria, this is not the case. In the last 15 years, high-profile politicians, including you, sir, have moved from one party to the other. Some have moved from 2 to 3 parties, trying to protect their interests and not building ideologies. Will you advise, sir? Will you advise, sir? Will you advise, sir, will you advise, sir, that stringent rules and regulations be made to guide the movement of politicians from one party to the other, so that we can build very strong political parties in Nigeria? Thank you.
Okay, Ibrahim, answer these ones first.
Thank you, Mr. President, distinguished senators. If I may begin with the first question on the issue of unemployment, I quite agree. Our country is seriously facing the problem of unemployment, like several other nations, and it is a very serious matter for us because This is about generations to come behind us, generations yet unborn. It is part of the problem that breeds in discipline. It is part of the problem that breeds in unrest and what have you. To address unemployment, of course, there would be several attempts. We must first of all address the issue of our curriculum in education. If I may refer you back to the periods of the 6334 when it started, our country attempted through that curriculum to address the issue of skill acquisition. The purpose of the policy then was, after the first 3 years of secondary education, a student was expected to have acquired some skill that he can use his hands and get self-employed. Unfortunately, because of the inconsistency in our polity, the military intervention severally did not, with due respect of course, unfortunately, that system was not allowed to work. The curriculum of 6334, which was basically intended to address the problem of skill acquisition, was started 76-77. By 1979, we had a new government that was intended to continue what was started earlier on by the Obasanjo military administration then. Unfortunately, no, I have to differentiate which side of Obasanjo I'm talking about.
He is making a very valid point, please.
You see, when the civilian administration came in 79, because of the long period we have had of the military, their concern then was provision of infrastructure to convince the people that civilian government had come. So that system was not allowed to work. So much so that by 1982, when the first graduates of the UPE came out of primary schools to be accommodated into the first 3 years of secondary school, the schools were not available, no plan had been made. Obasanjo's government had imported introductory technology materials. Meanwhile, nobody did anything to train the instructors to handle these introductory technology materials. They lied over in the place. By 1982, the schools were not there, no plan, no instructors, and therefore the program of 6334 to address the issue of unemployment through curriculum of education collapsed. And we were faced with overpopulation in our schools. I remember in my state by 1982, we had to create new junior secondary school 182 to accommodate the products of UPE that were not planned for. And that was the beginning of our crisis in that industry. The schools started growing. So one aspect of addressing unemployment, we must go back to the curriculum, and not all of our students. In fact, the new policy on education said only those capable and able are supposed to proceed to the second segment of the 6 years. Not all. It's a terminal point, the first 3 years. Unfortunately, you cannot terminate the students at that point because you have not given them any skill. So virtually everybody was moved up to the grammar section. Everybody wants to go to the senior secondary school. Everybody wants to go to the university and the rest. We ended up with so many secondary school dropouts who are unskilled. They know nothing apart from the lessons of English, history, geography that they took in their classrooms and could not be employed anywhere. That is one aspect. Secondly, the issue of diversify in so many ways. Virtually everybody is looking up to the government for employment. Everybody is looking up to the urban cities for employment. We have not engaged them in farming and different types of farming in our localities. My state government did a lot of that. We introduced the fish farming, the poultry, cattle rearing, and the rest in the rural areas, so that the secondary school leavers in the rural areas need not to have to come to the cities for employment. Thirdly, this is also tied to the issue of power generation. One of the sectors that will solve the unemployment problem is the industrial sector. You need to boost it, and you cannot boost the industrial sector without power generation. If you take Kano, at one time, one industry closed during my time. They dropped 25,000 workers. You can imagine how many of these 25,000 will manage their poverty. You can imagine the number of families that have been thrown out of service. And it's all the result of lack of power generation. Fourthly, the issue of our policy as a nation. Most of the textile industries, for example, in Kano, complained of our borders being wide open. Their products of the textile were competing with those being brought from China, from India, and several other places. One, they are better in quality, and they are cheaper because of cost of production back home. And they had no choice but to close up. So these are some of the issues that we need to address. It is the business of government, business of the private sector, business of everybody. We have to start addressing the issue of unemployment right from this classroom and prepare the students upwards. Otherwise, we'll be producing secondary school students, university students who are waiting to be employed by government, waiting to be employed by industries that are not there. So I'm sure if we diversify our programs and address each of these levels that are chain linked from the school up to the industry, from the school up to the government, and all these have to be addressed to ensure that the issue of unemployment is addressed. So power generation is one sector that is very crucial to our industrial growth. If you don't address power generation, then you forget industrial growth. The generation we have now, power holding company, or whatever it is called now, there was a time in Kano, NEPA of that time wrote to the government. Our daily need in Kano State at that time was 450 megawatts per day. NEPA wrote to us, please make do with 50 and share between Kano, Jigawa, and Katsina. 50. So you can imagine you need 450. You don't need to go to school to know that this mathematics is a failure already. 450 of your needs, you are given 50 yet to share with 3 others. This is to give you practically how low. It cannot even serve the domestic bulbs in the metropolitan city. So the issue of power generation, because of that, we as a government attempted to also diversify that sector. We tried to be in the process of independent power supply. Unfortunately, the process, the bureaucratic process is too cumbersome. We've gotten a number of offers from investors outside the country, but when they come, power generation, apart from the production, you are talking of the distribution and up to the consumer. The other 2 sectors of distribution is still within the NEPA control. Even if you get people to invest, we negotiated with them, but it is so long a process. They will require you to put in the seed money. We started all of this, and most of them will come to tell you that we are not sure of the perfection of collection of our tariffs at the end, because this has to be perfected. Nobody will invest for philanthropic purposes. You invest in business to gain. And when you're investing, you must make sure the end result brings in the returns. And unless we sanitize that, we will not be getting the people to invest into this sector. And I'm sure many states are very willing to take this private investment in power generation. and also it's a matter of policy, and I'm sure if we also diversify the government policy in this process, I'm happy it is already happening partly,